Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Mic'd Podcast. I'm Mike, a hairdresser of over 20 years. One of the best parts of my job is the conversations that I get to have with all of my clients. We talk about anything and everything and invite you to listen in as we get mic'd up for today's conversation. Today in the chair we have Roz. What does perspective mean and why does it change from the time we are kids to adults? Roz comes ready to discuss this very question and opens up about her personal story of how her perspective has changed throughout her 56 years of life. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Well, welcome.
Thanks.
Excited that you're here.
Glad to be here. It feels like old times.
I know. I wish we could have started filming 10 minutes ago. That would have been so fun. But we're here now, so let's get into the let's get into it. Now you, Roz, have come prepared.
Yes,
I think.
I do have.
I hope.
I have some stories in my pocket, but first I want to start with my lack of sense of humor. So I try really hard to be funny, and anyway.
You are funny.
I sometimes when I'm relaxed, but.
Nah.
So no, when I was like 16, my stepbrother, who was like super cute, like. His name's Todd, and my friends had nicknamed him Todd the Bod because he was really very cute.
That was my same nickname. I'm just kidding.
Anyway, Todd had a really good friend, Damon, and one time I was over at Damon's house, and Todd was there, and we're sitting around the kitchen. Todd and Damon are so witty together. They just bounce off each other. They're hilarious. And one day we were sitting at the kitchen table, and with them, and I was like chatting, or I was at the kitchen counter or whatever. We're all just hanging out. And I threw in a joke, and they didn't laugh. And this is the story of my life. I make up jokes, and nobody gets it. And I try to throw in puns, and sometimes I offend people. Like, they don't get my humor. So anyway.
Do you remember the joke?
No, but Damon said, Roz, here's the thing. You just raise your hand. When you raise your hand, we'll all know you're making a joke, and we'll all laugh. See, now, I was 16, and I thought that was the universal sign for, I just cracked a joke, everybody laugh now. And I went my whole life raising my hand. No one else got it. And
like before you told the joke, or like after? You
right
would tell the joke and then be like, hands up? So that would have been like 1984. And here we are 30 years later, Facebook's invented and all that. And I cracked a joke on a little like conversation in Facebook, and I said, I'm raising my hand. And lo and behold, Damon saw it, and he just cracked her, split his sides laughing, and that was a fun moment for me. So every little once in a while. Well, every time I've done your hair, I feel like we laugh a lot.
We have a great time.
It's, in my book, I will say you're funny.
Well, good.
And you don't have to raise your hand to tell me.
So I see you about 4 times a year for about an hour. So I'm on 4 times a year.
You're saying it's easy to be on when it's that?
Yeah. Okay, so here's the story I want to tell you. This is the thing. So I'm 56.
Okay.
And it's March.
It is March.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about perspectives today. I wanted to talk about how my perspective has changed in my life. And I never thought it would. So this is the thing. Last summer, I teach a music class that takes all of my creativity, my bandwidth, my heart, my energy, everything.
Yes.
And then when I'm not teaching, I'm resting so I can do it again. Anyway, so in my downtime last summer, I started writing my life story, which I even hired somebody. Like, I saw on Instagram a friend that I had in Arizona. She started helping people put their life stories together and put it in a book and finish it. She kept saying when I talked to her on the phone, I'm a finisher. I don't want to just start a project. We're going to finish. And so I would write, and then she would read it and help me come up with like little subtitles and and say, okay, I don't understand this, flesh this out a little more, that kind of thing. So it was like a coach. It was great. It was really, really great. But in the course of last summer, I only did my first draft of my first 10 years. I mean, this is a daunting task, and I can see how maybe some people don't write their life stories because, first of all, the sheer volume, but then the emotion, and
that is true, because it is your whole life. There's goods, there's bads, there's
right,
uglies, there's
all the things. And as I started writing, I started writing from what was in my head, right? So a lot of it came out as my perspective at that age. So at 4, at 6, at 8, at 10. But here I am now, 56 years later, and I know how life has turned out. And it was kind of a surreal experience in a couple of ways, because I'm a grown adult now, and I can remember how I felt as a child, but I look down now. I look back as an adult and I go, I don't think that's what was intended. Like, maybe that was my childlike interpretation.
So, what's an example? Like an example of one of these things that maybe perspective changed.
That is a good one. So, so my dad and mom divorced when I was 4, and they had faith and religious differences, and it was the early 1970s. Not that that really has a lot to do with it, but I mean, I'm divorced myself, and now the family laws are written to keep track of the dads or the moms. The court system isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it is better than it was in 1972. Let's say that.
Okay.
But Dad kind of needed to take care of himself. Let's say that. And I was able to meet up with my dad as an adult and kind of ask him questions about the divorce, which I think was really healing. I hope every kid has the opportunity to ask their parents, and the parents have the grace to tell them what is needed to be shared. And so I was grateful that my dad did that. But anyway, Dad just kind of left. Like, he was gone. And I think my mom was relieved. She was kind of glad. So we were in New Mexico. We moved back to Arizona, where my grandparents were. Both sets of grandparents were in Arizona. We moved back to Arizona, and we just never saw Dad. Like, we saw him a little bit. I remember when I was like 6, he came, and we spent the day with him and stuff like that. But when you're a kid, when you're 6, when you're 4, when you're 8, when you're 10, and you need to see your dad or your mom, and they choose not to see you, that hurts. And my brothers I have 2 brothers. I'm right in the middle. So my older brother and I were very close because of this loss, I think, that we both shared together. And my younger brother, also very close too, but he was so young when our parents divorced. He didn't really remember Dad the way Eric, my brother, and I did.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, my mom had married again, and we had these step-siblings who were cut from a different cloth. They had different parents, right? And that was hard in and of itself, but not knowing who we were. Like, I look like my dad. I didn't know that till I was a grown adult, that I looked just like my dad. I'm a girl. It's different. He had whiskers.
Yeah.
But I have his curly hair. He had intense blue eyes. He's passed on now, but he had these intense blue eyes, and all my kids have blue eyes. But anyway, when I was 10 and Eric, my brother, was 12, my mom and dad, I call him my mom and dad, my mom and my stepdad. It was easier growing up to call him Dad, and he was a good man to us. Anyway, they called us in for family council. And so there we're sitting on the couch, my 2 brothers and I, and because our step-siblings were with us, like in the summers and on weekends, but I think they weren't with us this time. Anyway, he called us in for family council, and he said, your father called. And, of course, we're like, yep, tell us all about it. We're so excited. It's like Christmas. And he said he'd like to have you come visit. And we were outside our minds with excitement, like the best thing ever. And so this would have been 1978, and we're in Arizona, and our dad lives up in the Panhandle in Idaho. He taught at the University of Idaho. And he was married to my stepmom, who I didn't know very well. Like, I don't remember meeting her, but her dad was a Greyhound bus driver. And like I said, it was the 70s. You didn't fly a lot back then like you do now. So we were going to ride the bus to Idaho, from southern Arizona to northern Idaho, Eric and I. And so my mom typed up this itinerary, and she gave us lots of quarters, lots and lots of quarters, and little activities to do, and off we went. And it was this great and grand adventure. Like, I don't know if you remember the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil Frankweiler, where they hide in the museum and they get the money out of the fountain, and they're all so independent, like they're hiding in the bus. That's how they got their getaway. That's how I felt. Like, this was the best thing ever. We're going to see our dad, and we're going to be there for a week and everything. So it was 3 days and 2 nights, and we switched buses a bunch, and we ate out of vending machines, and it was just this great adventure. And it was,
it's every child's dream.
Every child's dream. We're switching buses at 3 a.m. in the morning. Now that, again, back where I'm an adult now, and I think, that's not a big ride. But as a kid, oh man, this was the coolest thing. But we had to keep track of our time, and we had to change buses, and we had to be there on time. And anyway, it was fine. Anyway, finally we get to Lewiston, Idaho, where our dad's picking us up. And that was the last stop of that bus. And we're all ready, and we get off the bus, and our dad's the very first one, right by where the doors open. He's standing right there, and he's so excited to see us. And he was a smoker, and it was like, I gave him that big hug, and you could smell the tobacco on his shirt, and it was the best. It was the best. And his whiskers that I remembered, and his gravelly voice, everything. It was so great. And he took us to the student union at the University of Idaho, and that was when Asteroids, the video game, had just come out, which you're probably too young to even remember.
No, I remember. I played Pong.
Oh, you played Pong?
I remember playing Pong.
Okay.
It was awesome.
Well, Eric and I would go to the arcades all through our teenage years, but our dad was a pinball guy, but he'd been in the Army in the 60s, right? That was the thing in the 60s, was pinball. Anyway, he kept trying to get us to play the pinball machine, but we wanted to play Asteroids.
Pinball had its day. It was kind of over.
There was
electronics. I get it.
Yeah. Anyway, it was great. We had so much fun, and then he took us to his house, and it was just like, at that point, I think it had been 4 years since I had seen him, and it was like, better than Disneyland. You're just like, I was glowing in the aura of just being with him. Anyway, so we go to his house, we hang out, we do blah. Well, the long and the short of it is that our stepmom was not there at his house. And I'm now speaking from my adult view. I don't know what happened, but the next morning he put us on a plane and flew us home. And we were supposed to be there for a full 7 days.
Wow.
And there was no explanation of to why he would do that. Again, the adult in me says she made it hard on him. I don't know what happened. I don't know. But Eric and I couldn't. Still, I can't. We couldn't process it. We missed him so bad. And we're so excited to see him. And then he changed the plans. And it was back in the day when you could walk to the gate with your people. So he walked us up to the gate, and everybody lines up, and you have your paper boarding pass, and you give them their boarding pass, and there's no like scanner, there's no red blink, blink. That doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
They just take your thing, and Eric and I are just like, at least for me, I couldn't even think. I couldn't think. But we started walking down that little tunnel where you go to the plane, the concourse. When we hear this commotion, we're like, sort of halfway down the concourse, and we turn back behind us, and our dad is at the desk crying, giving them his keys, his wallet. He's like, please let me just hug him. Please let me give him one more hug. And they restrained him and called for security. Why didn't we run back there to him and give him a hug? Like we couldn't process. Like we just were like watching, and they were like, sir, no, sir, and held him. And so Eric and I just turned around and went back onto the plane, and they like tried to be super nice and give us little pins that were wings and, peanuts and a soda pop. And we were like, okay, like whatever, and we went home, and my mom had made plans while we were gone. Like, woo, the kids are gone. Let's go do something fun. So we had to go home to a friend's. She had to make arrangements to find a friend for us to stay with for our week while she finished out her vacation plans. And then we came home. And it was just this life-changing experience that I don't know. I think I embraced my step family more after that. I didn't see my dad again until college. So I saw him like...
Really? It had been that long? Because you were how old?
I was 10 when I saw him, when he sent us home.
And you didn't see him again until college?
Mm-mm.
Wow.
Because I went to school up at Rick's, and he was in Idaho. So I was thinking this would be a chance. Maybe I could drive up and see him. Anyway, I did get a chance to see him, and again, I'm in college. I don't have a car. I borrowed somebody's car, drove up to Idaho and spent the weekend with him. But, we got to talk about stuff and everything. We did not talk about that trip, but this is what I want. That's like just the wind up. The thing I wanted to talk about is that, my whole life, I have felt such a, I don't really have the words for it yet, but this sense of, I don't know where I belong, right? I don't know where home is. And as I was, as I've been kind of thinking about this and writing about it, I look back now and I think, maybe my stepmom made it really hard on him. All my growing up years, I thought Dad just didn't care about me, right? Why would he do that to me? Why didn't he want us? That's the thing. Why doesn't he want us? And there's going to be like all these mental health professionals are going to say, oh, it was a neurophysical whatever injury you sustained, or it was this, or it was that. I don't know what it was. I just know that it affected me and it affected Eric.
Yeah.
And now at this perspective, I look back and I go, okay, my dad was 38 when that went down. And I look at a 38-year-old now and I think, okay, yeah, you got your productive life going on now, but 38 is still pretty young compared to 80, for example, right?
Yeah.
There's still some things, you're still young enough at 38 to be kind of headstrong. And I think my dad was just caught up in his own life. I don't think he really realized what it would do to us. I don't think he understood how much we loved him, how much we needed him. I think he may not have realized that. And I look at my mom, this opportunity for her to get away because we were going to be away for a week.
Yeah.
That makes complete sense too. I don't think she did anything wrong. And I just have been thinking about how time changes our perspective, and we don't think it, oh yeah, time, yeah, blah, blah, blah. But really, time really does change our perspectives. And I'm not really mad at my dad, but it has made me, that experience and then the death of my brother. So my brother Eric committed suicide when he was 25. And sorry to be so emotional.
Yeah.
I just, he was my guy, right? We were partners in crime. We did it together. We survived together. And I have missed him my entire life. But I know that I look back at the way we viewed things as kids, and they seemed so real to us. But now here I am at 56, and I go, we would have been okay. It didn't have to be so hard. We could have. We were young. We could have. We could have not had to take it so personally. But then how do you say don't take it personally, right? Perspective is everything, and that's what I kind of wanted to visit with you about today is our perspectives. And I feel like we can't really connect with the people we love the most unless we sit in their experience with them and put ours on pause and be with them, meet people where they are. And that's how the only way to open the doors of building relationships and keeping relationships. What are your thoughts?
Hey everyone, Mike here. I just wanted to interrupt this episode and say thank you for listening. And please remember to subscribe to our channel and follow us on social media. We need your support to keep these episodes coming. So spread the word, and now back to the conversation. You know, as you've been sharing this, like the thing that kept popping into my head was, you know, I've gone through therapy and things like that. And I think everybody has little things throughout their life that have caused them, I don't want to say trauma, or just caused them like uneasiness, or caused them things that you really do sit and think back on throughout life. And I do remember one of the exercises that my therapist had me and my wife ended up doing the same thing, which was probably one of the most difficult things that I've ever had to do, was write a letter to my younger self. Yeah. And I still remember sitting down trying to write that letter. And again, talking about perspective, you're looking back and thinking, you know, what do I tell this younger version of myself, or what would I tell them? And now it's putting yourself in this role of like, I am now the adult, or the, you know, somewhat adult, whatever, trying to figure out how to tell my younger self to move on, to move past, to accept, to let go of whatever it is that is causing these issues, and moving on from it. So
Not letting it derail.
Not letting it like run amok.
Yeah.
But I also think, I mean, in therapy, like this is gonna sound so stupid, but like when I was younger, we moved twice in my life. The first time we moved from Illinois to Iowa, and at that time I think I was 14. Was it 14? I don't remember. 14 or something like that. And then we moved from Iowa out here to Utah at 16. And in my stupid teenage brain, my assumption is that we're moving because mom and dad hate my girlfriend. And you make up these weird stories in your head as a teenager, thinking that your life is being ruled by you. Like the world, you know, it's that time of your life where the world revolves around me. So the only reason we're moving
Right.
is because my dad hates my girlfriend, my mom hates my girlfriend, and they want to see me miserable. You know?
And that feels so real.
It does. It feels exceptionally real.
Yeah.
Now, again, growing up, having kids of my own, and it took me in therapy, and this is a part I think that is really an important part. Like, my therapist had me do this exercise, another one, not writing the letter to myself. That was one that helped me really understand the difference in perspective. Because as a child, my letter to myself as an adult would be different than my letter from an adult to a child.
Yeah. Yes.
The other one that they had me do, and this was under like a hypnosis type thing, was be in my parents' shoes.
Oh, wow.
And it was, I remember that therapy session crying a lot, because it was one of the first times in my life that I saw things from their perspective, and I knew that every choice, every decision that they made was out of love. And going back to me being a teenager, my viewpoint was, it was one of hate, or they just wanted me to be miserable because they didn't like this and that. And it wasn't until like sitting through that hypnosis therapy session and putting myself in their situation and understanding that it didn't have to do with my girlfriend, it had to do with a job. And Dad was trying to provide for the family and take care of us.
Right.
And he did what he had to do in order to take care of us. And it wasn't a good, nobody wants to move. Like, nobody wants to have their things in life change, but sometimes it happens. Sometimes you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for me, the perspective side is, and I think you talked about, like, you have to put yourself in other people's shoes. Like, put yourself in your dad's shoes.
My
put
dad's
yourself in
shoes.
your mom's shoes.
Exactly.
Like, what were they thinking? And because as a kid, you see it different.
Yeah. As a kid, you see it different. And as an adult, boy, I look at it differently. And my own kids and I think, so I remember, so my dad died when I was 29. He got esophageal cancer, and he'd smoked his whole life. Like, he didn't bounce back from that cancer. But in the last couple of months before he died, he moved to Arizona. He eventually divorced my stepmom, and he moved to Arizona, and I think he regretted not being able to work things out with my mom. Like, he and my mom were young and passionate, and there was a lot of yelling, and there was a lot of fighting. And guess what? Maybe it wasn't so impossible if they'd given each other a little bit of voice or understood each other. And then he married my stepmom and found out that my mom was actually a pretty great person. But he didn't want to mess it up again. So he worked really hard at that second marriage. And like you're talking about your parents moving you across country, I think my dad was doing the best that he felt was the right thing for him to do, right? What was the right thing for him to do? So, anyway, I just have been thinking about that a lot, and then,
well, but I also think, like, another part, I guess that this might be a different part of perspective, but
Yeah.
you're just talking about your younger parents, like, being passionate and yelling a lot and everything. Like, sometimes with those discussions, like, I wish that most people could, when it came to discussing something, whether it's a bad subject, a good subject, whatever, leave the yelling out of it and just talk.
just
Like,
let's just talk. Let's just sit down and
it might be a horrible conversation, but if you can
Or
keep it
painful.
calm,
Yeah, keep it calm. Keep the accusation out. Yeah, I feel that. I really do feel that. So, anyway, I've just been thinking about it for so long. So, my mom had some of her treasured cassettes and VHSs digitized.
Okay.
And so for Christmas, I went through them and put them on YouTube for her so that she could just access them and not have to navigate everything. Like, there's so many, there's Dropbox, la la la, blah, la la, blah, you know. Anyway, some of them were great. It was fun to hear everyone's old the voices from the past, hear the stories. But there was this video of my brother, and he's like, it's 1988. He died in 91. So it's 1988, and he's talking about his dreams and his plans to pursue a career in the music industry, in pop or rock or whatever. And so he's just telling about this new computer he bought and this new synthesizer, and he called this one piece of equipment an emphasizer. And I think that's what it was called then.
An emphasizer?
Emphasizer. And now we call them keyboards and synthesizers. So it was just kind of fun to see, you know, how much things have changed in technology, and hear him talk and see his optimism and see his dreams and see how hard he was working on his dreams. And then it was weird to be sitting where I'm sitting and knowing what happens, right? Yes. But it was really great to see his... I wonder what it's like for movie stars. I wonder what it's like for celebrities' families after they die to go back and watch some of their movies, because like we were talking about earlier how we like to listen to biographies or autobiographies of celebs, especially when they read them themselves, and how their personality really does bleed into their characters, right? So we know that those people up there acting, yeah, they're reading lines and they're bringing their acting skills to it, but there's a certain amount of their own essence, right? The inflections in their voice, their mannerisms, that if I was a family member, would I consider watching old movies of my dad or my child or whatever who had passed on? How would I feel about watching those movies? I wonder.
See, I guess it all depends on the relationship, but I think having those types of things would actually be very comforting.
That's what I think.
In the loss of somebody, to have a video or to have a, you know, you hear stories about people that they keep the last voicemail that somebody left before they die, and they listen to it over and over and over, because it really is just like a part of them that you get to keep with you.
Makes it seem real.
I think if I had a bunch of movies about me, you know, shoot, maybe one day, 40 years from now, when I'm, you know, pushing up daisies, my kids might come back and revisit one of these podcasts and be like, there's Dad. Like, I don't know, like maybe, I mean, I would hope so. I hope that by then they're not like, oh, Dad.
Dad, you're so cheesy.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's good to have those.
I think it's good.
Those little things.
I think it's good. So when Eric died, we didn't know a lot about suicide. Not that we know about suicide now, but I remember when Eric died, the belief was that suicide ran in families, that there was a genetic predisposition for suicide, that it's contagious in some way, right? And
because how long ago was this?
This was 91.
91, okay.
So, I feel like we've progressed at least to take some of the blame, if you will, off of the survivors, because those of us left behind are the ones, you know, what could I how how could I have done better? And anyway, my brother, I have a baby brother that's done a lot of research on bereavement for suicide, which is kind of a not as commonly researched before 5 years ago. And one of the things that he found when he interviewed survivors whose loved one had died by suicide was that they found meaning. They did something with it. And I teach this music program, and the reason I love it so much is that it's cleverly written, and it's got lots of beautiful songs and games, and we're teaching very young children all of the elements of musicianship in a way that is just for them just fun and playing games.
Yeah.
But there's an emotional component of looking into a child's eyes and encouraging them and having their parents sitting there with them, playing those games with them. During COVID, so parents attend every other week for the youngest age group, and then once a month as they progress through the program.
Okay.
And that's hard on parents to come up with time, so not just drop off their kid, but they have to arrange for whatever the other kids are doing and time in their own schedules to come and sit on the floor and play these games with their 4 or 5 or 6-year-old or 7-year-old. And it's a sacrifice. I have so much admiration for my families, but during COVID, when our state said, if you have 5 people or less in a room, you're not mandated to wear a mask. Well, how do you teach singing to young children if they can't see your mouth and your smile?
Yep.
That was hard. So I opted, where I normally would have a class of 7 or 8 kids and their parents in the room, I opted to have classes of 4 so that there would be me and 4 kids, and then I told the parents, you can't come, which is weird, right? But I thought, hey, I'm animated, the kids love me, I can do this, it'll be fine. It wasn't fine. The magic in the class really is when the parents come with their kid and be silly and jump around like a frog or play the games and sing the songs and play the bells or play the piano or whatever it is that we're doing. That child feels so loved and so special. One of my favorite childhood memories was when my mom would come with us to the city pool. So, we're at the city pool as often as possible in Arizona in the summer, unless you have your own pool. But my mom was afraid of water. She never learned to swim. So going to the pool for her was not her favorite thing to do. But for us, if she would come and gingerly step down the steps and stand in the 3-foot deep area and be there and be all, you splashed me and all of the things, whatever it is. That's one of my favorite childhood memories. And so when these parents come to my classes and they play with the child, that's the magic. And none of my families know that secretly those music classes are healing my heart. And there's nothing I want more than for those children to be connected to their parents through music with love. Because so much of music acquisition is, it's time to practice the piano. Mm-hmm. I had this friend in high school who wanted to play the drums, and his mom wanted him to play the piano. And so she said, I'll get you private drum lessons if you won't quit piano. Right? She's like negotiating the best she can. But he wanted to play the drums. And I love it when I see parents who are able to empower their kids, see their hearts, and empower them and love them to me, that's everything I never had, right?
Well, and there is definitely something to be said about a parent that just shows up. I mean, you've seen the YouTube videos of the little kid that's walking in to do their like school performance, and they're all kind of down and out, and then they look out in the crowd and they see their parent. And it doesn't even have to be a parent. It could be somebody that's acting as their parent, like
a significant person in their life, right?
Some kids don't have they have a home that's broken, or they have, they don't have that parental figure, but they don't have a parent that will be there. But as long as a kid can have somebody that will just show up for them, somebody that will encourage them to say,
wonderful, wonderful, you're
good
wonderful,
job, you're
yes.
amazing. Like, it really does make a difference when it comes to children. Like, even, I mean, going back to your dad running back to the airport and like being there, just wanting to give you a hug, even though that didn't happen, the idea that he showed up,
he wanted
to say that, like, that's massive. That's
massive,
huge.
yes. I agree with you. And you know what? I have had lots of losses, sure, yes. And I have had some amazing people step up in my life. Some really good friends, parents of friends. My mom was really courageous. My stepdad. But I've had really good friends. And I think that we can look for and find those good people in our lives. And we don't have to give up.
So I guess going back to, like, again, we have kind of the theme of perspective or whatever. So going through those things, what's your perspective now as you are the parent and you are in that position with your own kids?
It's tricky because, as you know, I'm still raising teenagers.
Yeah. But I mean, there's moments of like, okay, I had this happen in my life, and I'm going to learn from it. But how do you change from how you were raised as a kid and the experiences that you had there to maybe even, I don't know, I don't want to say make it better, because I think everybody's experiences define who they are in a way that is good for them. But how do you...
What's my takeaway? How's it changed me? How about that? Well, I'll tell you, Pilgrim.
Don't call me Pilgrim. Too old.
That's a John Wayne line now. Come on.
Makes me sound like I'm an old man.
I can say what I would like to have happen.
Okay.
And I don't know that I've succeeded, but I want my children to know that I accept them where they are. I love them where they are. And I'm not going to keep them in the dark. Let's have the conversations. Whatever they are, let's have the conversations. Because I had so many questions growing up, right? Mm-hmm. I want to have the conversations. I want to be open. I'm tired of being silenced. So my kids kind of get that end of it too, which is, okay, and I'm going to tell you where I am. So having those conversations, in my opinion, is about giving space for and safety to say the real things. Say what's really in your heart, what's really on your mind. What really do you think? How are you interpreting this thing? And not, I need to be on a soapbox, but I need you to know why I'm doing what I'm doing. And maybe I'm too idealistic. I've been accused of being very idealistic. But I want my kids to know I love them. And sometimes my girls come in to talk to me and they want to tell me all about their day, and I do fall asleep. But I can't beat myself up. Tomorrow's a new day, right?
Tomorrow's always a new day.
For the longest time, when I was a young parent, the first time at parenting, I have 7 kids. I was going to make sure that their lives didn't turn out like my brother's. My brother's reasons for leaving us were about being seen and being loved, and that absence of that. And so I wanted to give that to my kids. But it took a long time, and then I realized, that's when you turn into the parent that tries to wrap your kid in batting and put them in a box and not let them grow.
Not letting
that doesn't
them
work.
live and
I
grow
can't
and figure it out for themselves.
I can't prevent life, but I can strengthen, right? I can strengthen and create resilience and inspire, encourage resilience. But anyway, I really have missed my brother. So this is going to sound really strange. When my son died, I knew the signs. I could see it was coming. And of course, you do everything you can to hope that they would never choose suicide.
Yeah.
You don't want them to choose suicide. But that second time I saw it coming, and I was working overtime to love him, connect with him. But it was different. Whereas my brother's death hit me from left field. I didn't know that could happen. And I miss him. Yeah. Right? Still today.
See, I find it, when it comes to suicide, I remember having to talk to my youngest kids, because they say statistically now, or I guess there's cases of suicide clear down to like 10-year-olds. And my hope is that, I think the world needs more love, first of all.
Yes.
I think there's too many people that get brushed aside, forgotten about, ignored. And I think as a parent, letting your kids know that you love them continually. I used to get, in my house, we grew up in a very LDS home, and my dad especially always wanted to share his testimony. But that was a way for him to show love, even though it was a little, different or whatever, but sharing the testimony for him was a sign of love. I think regardless of whether it's a child, a friend, a sibling, a relative, we just need to be able to tell people that we love them more. We need to be able to say those words. Nowadays I feel like everybody's so worried about being canceled. Oh, I can't say it to that person because they'll think that I'm creepy, or they'll think that I'm gross, or I'm a pervert, or they'll think this or that. But I don't know.
Well, I agree with you, and I think recognizing sometimes, like, for example, a teenager really doesn't always, especially a teenage boy, I have 4 boys, they don't always need mom mushing all over them, but a little, like, in the shoulder, hey, man, that was awesome. You were awesome. No. That gets in. So we have to figure out what will get in, right? What actually will land.
Well, see, I think
I agree.
My 13-year-old, she says she hates it when I give her a hug.
Oh.
So I'll literally walk up with my arms open, and she'll either drop to the floor and play possum, or she'll run away. And even though I don't necessarily get to give her a hug, I think it's the act of showing her, like, I'm ready for a hug whenever you are.
I love you.
And I love you. So I think one day, eventually, hopefully, maybe she'll reciprocate and be like, all right, Dad, come on in
You
for a
have
hug.
so much power. Well, and I wanted to say this back to your dad and back to perspectives and back to loving. It just seems like, so I have this friend, maybe this will be our last story, but I have this friend who, she grew up in a very farming family, very hardworking, and she couldn't stand to be around this square family anymore. As soon as she graduated from high school, off she went, sowed her wild oats, did her thing, right? This was the early 70s. It was the 2000s when she told me this story, but in the early 70s, she would come home every once in a while, maybe every 1 or 2 years, and, go home and see the folks. And she said, I would only drink Perrier. So the young ones out there don't realize that bottled water hasn't been around forever. But back in the day, there was only Perrier, and it was expensive. And she said, and I was just so snotty and snooty, I would only drink Perrier. And then she broke down and she said, and my parents, who wouldn't spend a nickel on anything, stocked the fridge to the gills with Perrier. And she said it wasn't until after they died that she realized how much they loved her. We're all doing our best. We're all truly doing our best at any given moment. And when we know better, we can do better.
Yep.
So I have loved visiting with you through the years. Thanks, Mike.
Well, I appreciate you a lot. I think that you have a lot of good perspective on life.
Clever.
And it really is. It's always a blast when you come in.
Thanks for making me look good.
Thank you. You've got some new little curtain bangs.
Yay,
so
thank you so much.
Having some fun. And
love my highlights too, BTW.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so
You're
much.
amazing. And
you didn't throw one in, huh?
so funny.